Great. Hello. I'm so grateful to be included in Tilt, and I want to highlight how important what you're doing is to shifting the general awareness, the consciousness throughout our entire global community. It takes really only a handful of people to speak with great clarity about what is true, and there will be a shift. There will be a tipping point for everyone else. Many people, when I was a child, said that, the Berlin Wall, it will never fall. And it felt like an eternity, and maybe it would be 13 generations. But once there was a momentum, the Berlin Wall crumbled. And I think that's where we are in terms of our global consciousness. I'm going to share with you today some science, and it's a science on our innate spiritual nature. And my hope is that you might regard this science as something of a lens to look through and regard what might be seen as some of our social or political or generational problems really as foundationally an opportunity pushing us to realize our deeper, innate, hardwired spiritual nature. So if you don't mind, I will open and share screen. Okay, so here we are. Here we are. Every one of us is born with an innate capacity for spiritual awareness. And if I might invite you into a brief practice, this could be seen as a doorway or an entree into tapping into your innate awakened brain, your innate capacity to awaken your birthright. I'm going to invite you to close your eyes, take 5 breaths, open up your inner space. Inside your inner chamber, I invite you to set before you a table. This is your table. And to your table, you may invite anyone, living or deceased, who truly has your best interest in mind. Anyone living or deceased who truly has your best interest in mind. And with them all sitting there, ask them if they love you. And now you may invite your higher self, the part of you that's infinitely more than anything you have or don't have, anything you may have done or not done, your true eternal higher self. And ask you if you love you. And now finally, you may invite your higher power, however you know, whatever your word may be, your higher power, the source. And ask them if they love you. And with all of those people assembled there right now, what do they need to tell you now? What do they need to share? What do you need to know? And when you're ready, I invite you back. This is your birthright. This is your innate neuroseat of transcendent awareness, through which, as you just did, you can engage the deepest transcendent relationships. Whether your word is spirit or sacred consciousness in us, through us, and among us, we were built to have the capacity to be in a deep dialogue at the level of sacred consciousness, perhaps within Tilt, love and information. These regions here, these broad and pervasive regions in red, are regions of cortical thickness associated with sustained use of spiritual awareness over years. We published this in JAMA Psychiatry in 2014, and what you'll see is that these regions of thickness, processing power, cortical thickness, are in the parietal, precuneus, and occipital regions of perception, reflection, and orientation, such as you just engaged. Now, what might be of particular significance as literally half of Gen Z right now, young adults, struggle with some form of frustration, depression, the diseases of despair, is that these regions are not thick but thin in people with recurrent major depression. What I'm going to suggest to you is that there's something about your deep innate spiritual nature that is such that when you realize your full capacity for awakened awareness, many of the perceived obstacles and many of the real obstacles can be perceived in ways that are transformational, in ways that are no longer hard stops or impediments, but are gateways of entry. Yes, there are real problems in the world, but they were created in large part by humans. And the deep rearrangement of meaning through which we will be able to have an entirely different approach to our beautiful earth, to one another, is found right here in your red brain. Anger alone at the situation, even if it's completely valid anger, will not get you through it. You, Gen Z, are in a generation of enormous dynamism, and it can be the dynamism that reworks human relationship to earth and one another, or left willy-nilly and just left to under the fires of anger, it can be the volatility that undoes your world. It's your choice. And it doesn't matter whose fault it is your opportunity. So your red brain, your capacity for an awakened awareness, allows you to shift from what was fair and who did what I call the narrow lens of causality, tactics, strategy, achievement, to an awakened perspective that says, hey, what is life itself showing me now? And where might there be guidance in and through sacred consciousness, direction? You have the equipment through which to reperceive and then reconceive a civil society and a continuous humanity with life itself, Earth. But it is a choice, and like all major, it's not a life hack by any means. It is a deep reorientation, the awakening of your spiritual brain. Society has for thousands of years garnered inspired knowledge through religion. Religion is 100% transmitted by environment. It is the gift of our family, our communities. We may take it or reject it. If we don't like one house of worship, we can walk down to another or form our own. Religion is 100% transmitted by the environment. But the yellow circle, spirituality, red brain, is a capacity that is innate. You are born. People often say to me, am I spiritual? I don't even need to turn my head. I can tell you, yes. You are given at birth an innate capacity through which to perceive the transcendent and which to feel this deep loving consciousness of your transcendent relationship in the presence of one another. Relational spirituality. Every one of us on earth is born a spiritual being. About 2/3 of people say my personal spiritual life is shaped by my religion. And about 30% and more amongst Gen Z say, no, my spiritual life is formed outside of religion. But whether or not we choose the embrace of religion, we are all naturally spiritual beings. In the awakened brain, I go in great detail into the studies that show our natural birthright for awakened awareness and how, through very different and unique passageways, people who are now meaningful contributors to society in their 20s had times of deep despair, a developmental depression that opened into the greatest spiritual awakening of their lives. Well, whereas in the past 100 years, developmental depression and its yielding into spiritual awakening has been experienced one by one, each of us in our walk, it is now going on throughout our entire global post-industrial culture. There is a developmental depression where we grow up out of this post-industrial adolescence into people who can see and know one another with more open eyes, who are in a deep relationship, who feel an inherent sense of moral care, dominion not to dominate, but to welcome into our domicile all living beings, to care for. The Awakened Brain has the studies that I'll share with you here today listed in the references. I'm going to share with you in aggregate the findings in the Awakened Brain. So here's the first. If you think back to when you were a child, your temperament, whether you're introverted or extroverted, whether you're tightly wound or laid back, your temperament was with you even then. Think back to being 4, think back to being 8. Well, temperament by the time we're 30 is about half inborn and half environmentally formed. You've figured out how to live with your temperament in the world. If you're high strung, how to soothe yourself. If you're anxious, how to calm yourself. If you're extroverted, how to take a breath. Temperament is half innate, half environmentally formed. The capacity through which we experience spiritual life is 1/3 innate, 2/3 environmentally formed. Twin studies show us this. That means that while spirituality is your birthright, it is 2/3 environmentally shaped. That may include your choice of your faith tradition in the 2/3 environmental embrace, or as you get older and you choose your environment, it could include a great host of ways in which you cultivate your spiritual core, including the internal environment of meditation or prayer. But in our entire lives, we are never more impacted by the internal and external environment, by the choice that we make to treat life as a sacred journey or not. We're never more impacted in the formation of our awakened brain than in the years of 15 through 25. And when we're 18 through 25 and have enormous choice in the life we lead, we are actually deciding what will be the foundation of our neuroperception for the rest of our lives. If we strengthen our natural awakened brain, if we use our awakened awareness, we are far less addicted, we are far less depressed, far less likely to take dangerous risks as a way of trying to feel that buoyancy, and instead feel internally the extraordinary numinousness, the resonance. This is our birthright, and it is all of ours. How do we cultivate it? How do we build our awakened awareness? I'll share with you one more practice. This one perhaps even squares with experiences that you have had in the past. I invite you to take 5 breaths, close your eyes. I invite you to locate a time where you wanted something really badly. And you know what? It was yours. You had researched it and you had strategized. A plus B plus C, it was in the bag. You'd done it right, 99%, and you went for that red door. It could have been a job, a promotion, admission to a school, getting him or her to say yes. There was something that was so close. And as you grabbed the red door, you reached for that, turned it. The knob didn't turn, it was stuck. And it was almost inconceivable because you had done A plus B plus C. Tactically excellent, well-researched. You'd done everything right. You'd given it time, and still the red door is stuck. It might have been infuriating. It might have been in times depressing. But because the red door was stuck, you eventually had no choice but to turn. And you may have turned 20 degrees. You may have turned 80 degrees. You may have turned 180 degrees. And there was a wide open yellow door. You might have said yellow doors don't exist, or what are yellow doors? But that yellow door led you to someone who is even more right for you. led you to a school where you found a mentor that opened up a part of yourself you didn't know was there, led to a profession at which you were actually better. The yellow door was not what you had envisioned. The yellow door was not what you had wanted. It was better than what you wanted. And as you think about that stuck red door and the hairpin turn leading you to the wide open yellow door, was there anyone at that U-turn who helped you along, maybe informed you of the yellow door or pointed the way, maybe told you a story of their own journey through a yellow door? It could have been someone you met for 2 minutes on the bus or at the coffee shop. It could have been a story told to you by someone you knew well, best friend, a partner. But because that person showed up, they were a trail angel so that you knew how to guide your own path. And as you sit back now and you look at the stuck red door and the hairpin turn, the trail angel, and the wide open yellow door, the yellow door that's had everything to do with what your life now is about. How really are the most important things in our lives found? Is it narrowly? Is it exclusively by strategy and tactics? Sure, we need that. But maybe life is about 10% control on 90% flux, dynamism. So that we need to change our conversation with life to flourish from what do I want and how am I going to get it to what is life showing me now? What spirit, God, force, sacred consciousness are you revealing to me now? In this dialectic, we are emanations of the sun and in relationship to the sun. We are on a sacred journey, stepping way back. If we can go from narrowly makers of our paths to discoverers of our journey, this is not fatalism. This is a dialogue. What is life showing me now? Our awakened brain brings us into a deep, dynamic relationship with Source, with who I call God. And it is that relationship, the transcendent relationship, which you accessed just a few moments ago in our shared practice, allows us not simply to get or not get what we thought we wanted based on yesterday's information, but to receive wide open yellow doors that whose significance has yet to unfold, to receive the high pixel intuitions, messages from trail angels that unfold over time. And so that at the inner table of human knowing, we might have, of course, the logician and of course, the empiricist as a scientist, and equally the intuitive and the mystic and the skeptic. And it is in this capacity to use multiple forms of knowing, hardwired, if you will, epistemologies, that we become able to realize the tremendous opportunity of living in dialogue with life itself. When we awaken to the world around us, of which we are emanations and yet in dialogue. Here is a letter from Carl Jung to Bill Wilson, the founder of AA. And what you'll see here is that Jung understood the limits of hard rationality, the prison house of life lived under radical materialism, using only our achieving brain. Here, Jung says to Bill Wilson about someone struggling with addiction. His craving for alcohol was the equivalent on a low level of the spiritual thirst of our being for wholeness, expressed in medieval language, the union with God. The only right and legitimate way to such an experience is that it happens to you in reality. It must be lived in reality. And it can only happen to you when you walk on a path which leads you to higher understanding. You may be led to that goal by an act of grace, or through a personal and honest contact with friends, or through a higher education of the mind beyond the confines of mere rationalism. Alcohol in Latin is spiritus, and you use the same word for the highest religious experience, as well as for the most depraving poison. The helpful formula, therefore, is spiritus contra spiritum. I remain yours sincerely, Carl Jung. The United States struggles, post-industrial global culture struggles with addiction. And when we look at the narrative underlying addiction, it is I've got to have it. I've got to have it is inculcated. It is in the air and water of our public square, because we live in a public square minus a spiritual core. We have a transactional culture where we treat one another and many living beings as if they are merely transactional material beings. But we have within us, immediately, quarter inch under the surface, the choice to awaken our natural spiritual brain, to use our awakened brain and know every living being in dialogue, in relationship as sisters and brothers, and know every human being in relationship as sisters and brothers, to reformulate our classrooms and boardrooms and Zoom rooms such that we come together not transactionally, but transformationally. The I-thou relationship, where I look at you and you are an emanation of the divine, you are an emanation of source. And it is not about what can you do for me now, but how we might walk together on this quest, the ultimate journey of living a human life, a soul on earth. Thank you.